that if you are honest with yourself, you will now begin to understand why Prince Harry has come under such vitriolic and sustained attack from the most influential media outlets in this country. Do you imagine if I weighed in on someone on this programme without mentioning to you that they were currently engaged in legal action that could see me in very, very serious trouble? So they're desperate to silence him because he is bringing the fight to their doorstep. And I do believe that an awful lot of the treatment that he's received over the last few years has been designed to try to persuade him to stop. If you think what you've been through so far is bad, you better just take a look at this. Oh, and by the way, nice wife you've got there. Be a shame if something happened to her. That's how bad it is. That is what they've done. The sheer scale of the abuse that is heaped on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex by British newspapers is breathtaking. To humiliate him, malign him, libel him, undermine him, abuse him, have been legion. I've never seen anybody. I haven't seen serial killers come in for as much abuse from British newspapers and some broadcasters as Prince Harry has. Not in terms of the regularity, because a serial killer will be in the spotlight for a fortnight. But the idea that they'd come back to Prince Harry with the vilest of accusations and the vilest of allegations and the vilest of coverage again and again and again and again is, I think, unique. He has the guts and the capacity and the resources to refuse to be bullied by some of the most bilious and unpleasant human beings that have ever deigned to call themselves journalists. So that today is a really, really important observation to make. It is a huge victory for Prince Harry, and he has just smashed them right where it hurts. And I'll tell you something for nothing. It's not over yet.
Prince Harry has endured an assault from British media institutions that is genuinely unprecedented in modern journalism. This isn't hyperbole, it's observable fact. While serial killers might dominate headlines for a brief period before the spotlight moves elsewhere, Harry has been subjected to relentless, systematic abuse year after year. British tabloids and broadcasters have repeatedly attacked him while simultaneously engaged in legal proceedings against him, a conflict of interest that would be questioned in any ethical profession. Yet they continue with seeming impunity, driven by something far darker than legitimate criticism. The sheer brutality of this sustained campaign is breathtaking. The vilest accusations, the most toxic allegations, the most poisonous coverage imaginable, all directed at a single public figure with a consistency and ferocity that defies ordinary journalistic interest. It appears almost pathological in its relentlessness. What's actually happening here reveals something fundamental about how power operates in Britain. There exists a carefully choreographed symbiotic relationship between the royal family and the tabloid press, a mutual benefit arrangement so deeply embedded in our media landscape that we barely notice it anymore. For generations, tabloids have relied upon sensational royal coverage to keep their businesses afloat. They're financially struggling, desperately in need of circulation numbers to survive, and royal drama has been their lifeline. Meanwhile, the royal family has tacitly accepted this arrangement as the price of their prominence, the machinery through which their preferred narratives get amplified and protected. This ecosystem has functioned smoothly for decades because everyone played by the unspoken rules. But Prince Harry represents an existential threat to this entire arrangement. He's a member of the royal family with the resources, the guts, and the moral clarity to refuse to play along. The moment he began fighting back, taking legal action, speaking truth about the abuse he and his family endured, challenging the lies being printed about him, he became not just an inconvenience, but a genuine threat to an establishment built on silence and complicity. The tabloids cannot afford to lose him through indifference or retreat. They need him trapped in the cycle of attack and humiliation. When he refuses to be bullied into submission, when he dares to hold them accountable, they have only one response: escalate. Make an example so brutal and sustained that perhaps the next person might think twice before threatening their grip on power. When Meghan arrived at the heart of the royal family, the mask of public decorum slipped away entirely behind closed doors. Derogatory comments flowed freely from those who smiled for the cameras. She was branded an opportunist, a narrative so transparently false it bordered on the absurd. Here was a woman with substantial wealth, a successful career, and financial independence stronger than figures like Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, possessed at the time. Yet somehow she was cast as a gold digger preying on the institution. The hypocrisy is staggering. The very same people who performed civility in public, who waved and nodded with practiced grace, were engaged in a systematic campaign of treatment that contradicted their every public gesture. They built an entire framework of respectability around their contempt, masking prejudice behind whispered conversations and sideways glances, creating a toxic environment where discrimination could flourish under the guise of tradition and propriety. This wasn't mere disagreement or protective concern for the institution. It was calculated, deliberate, and rooted in something far darker than anyone cared to admit publicly. Here's what reveals the true desperation beneath all of this. The attacks are financially motivated. Tabloids are drowning. They're hemorrhaging circulation, struggling for relevance in a digital age, and they desperately need Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex to remain trapped in a cycle of scandal and sensationalism, because their entire business model depends on it. Without the controversy, without the engagement, without the outrage that Harry and Meghan generate, the entire apparatus starts to collapse. They need him. They need the headlines. They need the clicks and the shares and the algorithm feeding outrage, because without it, they're finished. This financial desperation is precisely why the attacks never stop, why they escalate, why they become increasingly unhinged and coordinated. The moment Harry and Meghan fade from the headlines, the moment people stop paying attention, these outlets lose their lifeline. The media's relentless obsession reveals something far more damning than their cruelty. It reveals that they've lost control of the narrative. The tabloids have lost the power to shape perception the way they once did. They're terrified of Harry's refusal to comply, frightened by his willingness to fight back through the courts, panicked by his capacity to speak truth about their abuses without apology. Every viral moment, a skiing video, a genuine family photograph, a candid glimpse of Harry and Meghan unbothered and happy, contradicts the carefully constructed narratives they've spent years building, and it drives them into a frenzy. Because joy becomes a threat when you've invested everything in depicting someone as broken and defeated. Happiness becomes dangerous when your entire operation depends on selling humiliation. This is why their desperation has become so visible, so transparent, so utterly undeniable. They platform the same hostile voices repeatedly. They monitor social media communities obsessively. They manufacture outrage from the smallest moments. They coordinate attacks across multiple outlets, not because they're winning, but because they're losing, and they know it. The courtroom victories secured by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex represent catastrophic defeats for the tabloid outlets that have relentlessly pursued them. These legal wins have exposed the hollowness of narratives designed to isolate and intimidate, proving that truth and accountability can prevail even against the most entrenched institutional power. These victories became something far more consequential than simple legal wins. They became proof that the fabricated narratives these outlets had constructed were precisely that: fabrications without substance, stories built on sand that crumbled when subjected to actual scrutiny. This terrifies the establishment because their entire business model depends on controlling the narrative, on remaining the gatekeepers of what the public is allowed to believe. But Harry found a way around them entirely. Through social media, through platforms they cannot control or manipulate, Harry and Meghan bypassed the traditional gatekeepers completely. A skiing video posted directly to followers becomes more powerful than 1,000 column inches in the Daily Mail. A genuine photograph of the family living authentically reaches millions in seconds, demolishing carefully constructed smears before they can even take root. The public, when given access to authentic moments rather than filtered editorial narratives, has overwhelmingly chosen to see the truth. These aren't carefully constructed PR moments, though the tabloids desperately want you to believe they are. These are windows into actual human life, and that's precisely what makes them so devastatingly powerful. You cannot manufacture the warmth in Harry's eyes when he's with his family. You cannot fake genuine laughter. You cannot construct authenticity in a laboratory. The collapse of the symbiotic relationship, where one member refuses to be controlled, refuses to play along, refuses to disappear, represents an existential threat to an establishment built entirely on complicity and silence. The public has developed an almost supernatural ability to detect dishonesty because they've been exposed to it so relentlessly, and rejection has become their default response. It's not that people are suddenly believing everything the Sussexes say uncritically. It's that they've learned to recognize the pattern of coordinated attacks, the recycled talking points, the transparent desperation, and they've simply chosen to trust their own eyes over the lies being screamed at them from every headline. When presented with fabricated narratives, the public has time and again risen up with swift and decisive backlash. The moment derangers pushed false claims, whether about doctored videos or the authenticity of photographs, the narratives crumbled beneath the weight of public scrutiny and common sense. The public support for Harry and Meghan Sussex has transformed into something the tabloids simply cannot ignore, cannot manipulate, and cannot control anymore. What started as isolated voices of reason has evolved into an unstoppable groundswell, a tidal wave of backing that grows stronger with each passing day, each fresh attack, each desperate attempt at character assassination. This isn't some fringe movement anymore. This is mainstream public sentiment, and it's growing by the day. The numbers speak for themselves. Every time a tabloid launches another coordinated assault, the response from ordinary people is swift, decisive, and increasingly vocal. Social media erupts not with agreement, but with unified rejection of the narrative being force-fed to them. Comments flood in, shares multiply exponentially, and the consensus becomes abundantly clear. People see through this. They understand the game being played, and they're rejecting it wholesale. The upcoming Australian visit stands as defiant proof that intimidation tactics have failed spectacularly. This isn't some theoretical victory or abstract concept. This is measurable, observable reality. When Harry and Meghan stepped onto Australian soil before, the reaction was undeniable. Massive crowds, global attention, genuine connection. The kind you cannot manufacture, the kind you cannot control, the kind that demonstrates beyond any shadow of doubt that no amount of media manipulation can override the human capacity to recognize decency, to appreciate integrity, and to support those who refuse to be bullied into submission. Now, as they prepare for another Australian visit, the same institutions that tried so desperately to make them toxic, to make them pariahs, to make them untouchable, are absolutely terrified because they know how that story ends. They know that crowds will gather. They know that genuine connection will happen. They know that Harry and Meghan will walk away stronger, more supported, more vindicated than ever before. The Sussexes' resilience through relentless persecution has become undeniable proof of their capacity to withstand the most coordinated attacks a compromised media apparatus can muster. Their victory isn't some distant aspiration, but an observable, measurable reality playing out in real time. The long game belongs to those with nothing to hide, and the Sussexes will keep winning because their foundation rests on truth, not on the fragile house of cards the British tabloids have constructed from lies. If Harry and Meghan Sussex were truly irrelevant, why the obsession? Why the surveillance? Why the coordinated attacks? Why the desperation? Because deep down they know exactly what's at stake: control, and they're losing it. This story is far from ending. In fact, it feels like it's only just getting started. James O'Brien was right. The scale of this is breathtaking. But the silence is over. We see the tactics, we know the players, and we aren't going anywhere. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shown us what it looks like to stand up to bullies. They've shown us that you don't have to accept the narrative that's forced upon you. Whether they are on the slopes or on a tour of Australia, they are moving forward with grace, dignity, and a whole lot of unbothered energy. If you are sick of the tabloid lies and you want to stand with a couple that is actually making a difference, then you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now. Join our community, the Squaddies, the Sussex Squad, and everyone who believes in truth over tabloid trash. Don't forget to like this video and drop a comment below. What did you think of the ski frenzy? Are you excited for the Australia buzz? Let's talk about it. Until next time, keep your heads high and stay unbothered.